Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're exploring some ancient wisdom that's surprisingly relevant for us even today. We'll be diving deep into excerpts from Living Set Apart, numbers 5 to 6, explained for today's life.
Sounds intriguing.
We'll be talking about ancient Israelite practices from the book of Numbers, chapters 5 and 6.
Chapters 5 and 6.
Yes, and we'll be discussing what those ancient practices might mean for life in 2024.
It's amazing how these chapters offer a blueprint for a life that's set apart, not in a way that removes us from the world, but in a way that allows us to live with intention and purpose.
Exactly. It's about honoring something bigger than ourselves. And ultimately, that leads to a stronger community.
I see.
We're starting in Numbers 5, where God gives instructions to the Israelites on everything from handling illness to dealing with wrongdoing.
Okay.
The first thing that jumps out at me is this emphasis on cleanliness within the camp.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. It's easy to misinterpret that as some kind of judgment. But if we look deeper, it becomes clear that it was about protecting the well-being of the whole community.
I see.
Think of it like public health measures. Individual actions have ripple effects.
Right.
Back then, if someone was sick, they were separated from the group until they recovered.
That makes sense. But how does that translate to our lives today? We're not exactly living in tents in the desert anymore.
Right.
Do you think this idea of cleanliness could apply to things like our mental and emotional well-being?
Absolutely. It's about creating healthy boundaries, not just physical ones, but also emotional and mental ones. What we allow into our minds and hearts impacts us just as much as any physical ailment.
So true.
Think about the content you consume, the relationships you nurture, even the thoughts you allow to linger.
Yeah.
Are they contributing to your overall well-being, or are they depleting you?
That's a great point. I know for me, spending too much time on social media can really drain my energy.
I hear that.
Maybe it's time for a digital detox.
A modern-day version of separating yourself from something that's not good for you.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of what we expose ourselves to and making conscious choices to cultivate a space where we can thrive. And, Numbers 5 doesn't stop at physical and spiritual cleansing. It also delves into some pretty intense instructions about confession and restitution.
Oh, right.
This is where it gets really interesting. God lays down the law. Literally, if you've wronged someone, you need to own up to it and make things right.
It's not just about a quick sorry.
It's about actual restitution, paying back what you owe, plus an additional 20% to truly restore the harm you've caused.
Exactly. And it raises some thought-provoking questions for us today.
Definitely.
In our fast-paced world where apologies can sometimes feel superficial, what does genuine responsibility look like?
Right.
Is a simple sorry enough? What steps can we take to truly make amends for our actions? I think it's important to consider the psychological impact on both sides. Offering a sincere apology and taking steps to make things right can be incredibly liberating for the person who's done wrong.
And for the person who was wronged, receiving a genuine apology and seeing that effort towards restitution can be a powerful step towards healing and forgiveness.
Yes, it goes beyond just smoothing things over. It's about acknowledging the impact of our actions and working towards restoring trust.
And that concept of trust is so crucial. Without genuine confession and restitution, trust erodes. And without trust, it's incredibly difficult to build healthy relationships, strong communities, and even a just society.
So true.
Speaking of trust, Numbers 5 also tackles the rather sensitive issue of infidelity. There's this whole section about a test a husband could request if he suspected his wife of being unfaithful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one to read through a modern lens. But I think even though the specific ritual described wouldn't fly today, there's still something we can learn from it. The idea that truth and clarity are essential for a healthy relationship.
Precisely. And that's a principle that resonates deeply even today. Healthy relationships thrive on open communication and trust. If there's suspicion or doubt, it needs to be addressed honestly and respectfully.
It's like that ancient ritual in its own context was trying to bring hidden things into the light.
Yes.
Of course, we wouldn't condone those methods today, but the idea of confronting difficult truths to build stronger relationships, that's something we can all take to heart.
Definitely. It's interesting you bring up the idea of bringing things to light, because that reminds me of another passage in Numbers 5. This source material also talks about a test for infidelity where a woman would drink bitter water.
Right, and that section definitely raises some eyebrows.
It's crucial to approach this passage with sensitivity.
For sure.
We're looking at it through a 21st century lens.
Yeah.
And the cultural context of ancient Israel was very different.
Absolutely. But even with that context in mind, Is there anything we can take away from this passage that's relevant to us today?
I think what we can focus on is the emphasis on truth
Yeah.
and its power to either vindicate or expose.
Right.
You see, the underlying principle, regardless of the method,
Yeah.
is that truth matters.
So even though we wouldn't condone the specific actions described in the text,
Right.
we can still appreciate the underlying message.
Absolutely.
Just like lies and deception can poison a relationship. Honesty and transparency help build trust.
Exactly. Recognizing that truth, even when it's difficult, is ultimately the foundation for healthy relationships and a just society. Now let's shift gears a bit and move on to number 6, where we encounter this fascinating concept of the Nazarite vow.
Okay, the Nazarite vow. What was it all about?
Essentially, it was a voluntary period of intense dedication to God,
Okay,
often taken for a specific period of time.
gotcha.
Nazarites had to follow certain restrictions,
Like what?
abstaining from wine and grapes, not cutting their hair, and avoiding contact with the dead.
Wow, that sounds intense. It almost seems like a form of self-denial. But what was the purpose behind these specific restrictions?
They were symbolic acts of separation and devotion.
Okay.
By abstaining from certain things and practices, Nazarites were outwardly demonstrating their inward commitment to God.
So in a way, it's like creating space and minimizing distractions in your life to strengthen your connection with the divine.
You got it. It was a way of fostering deeper spiritual connection and growth. And it's truly remarkable.
Right.
The Nazarite vow wasn't limited to priests or religious leaders. It was open to anyone who felt called to this level of dedication.
That's really interesting. It's like saying that anyone, regardless of their position or status, can choose to deepen their relationship with God. And that's a really empowering message, especially for us today.
I agree. It's a reminder that we don't need to be spiritual superstars or live in a monastery to experience a profound connection with something bigger than ourselves. It's about finding ways to integrate these principles into our everyday lives.
So how can we create our own Nazarite moments in the midst of our busy, often overwhelming lives?
Well, it could be something as simple as setting aside dedicated time each day for prayer or meditation. Maybe it's taking a break from social media for a week or committing to volunteer work in your community.
I love that. It's about intentionally creating space in our lives to connect with something deeper, something more meaningful.
Precisely. It's about finding ways to quiet the noise and distractions of the world so we can tune in to what truly matters. One thing that I find particularly encouraging about the Nazarite vow is the provision for restoration.
What do you mean by that?
If a Nazarite accidentally became defiled,
Yeah.
let's say they came into contact with a dead body, they didn't just give up and say, well, I messed up, it's over.
Right.
There was a process of sacrifice and renewal, symbolizing a fresh start.
So it's like a reminder that even when we make mistakes, we're not irrevocably broken. There's always a path back, a chance to start again.
Exactly. It's such a powerful message of grace and hope for us today. We all stumble and fall short. But God's grace is always there. He offers us second chances, opportunities to start anew, and the strength to keep moving forward.
I think that's something we all need to hear sometimes.
Yeah.
We live in a culture that can be so quick to judge and condemn, but this idea of restoration reminds us that there's always hope for redemption.
You're absolutely right. Forgiveness is essential for both personal and communal healing. And speaking of forgiveness and restoration, I think it's a perfect segue to the final section of number 6, the Aaronic blessing.
The Aaronic blessing, one of the most beautiful and enduring passages in the Bible. It always sends chills down my spine.
It truly is. In number 6.2426, we read, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace."
Every time I hear those words, I'm struck by their simplicity and power. They're like a universal prayer for God's favor, protection, and peace.
And what's remarkable is that this blessing, spoken thousands of years ago, is still used in countless faith traditions today.
Wow.
It's a testament to its enduring power and relevance.
It really speaks to the core of the human experience, doesn't it? This longing for blessing, for peace, for connection with something greater than ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that blessings aren't just about warm, fuzzy feelings. They have a real power to impact our lives and the lives of those around us.
Oh, so I've always thought of blessings as more of a symbolic gesture.
Well, think about it this way. When someone speaks a blessing over us, they are essentially declaring God's favor and goodness over our lives.
Okay.
It's an act of faith that invites God's presence and power into our situations.
So it's like we're planting seeds of hope and possibility with our words. And those seeds have the potential to grow into something truly beautiful.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not just about receiving blessings. It's about being a blessing to others. It could be through a kind word, a helping hand, a listening ear, or simply a genuine smile.
Yeah.
We can all be conduits of blessing in the world.
I love that. It's like we're all little walking, talking, blessing dispensers, spreading kindness and light wherever we go. But as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Numbers 5 and 6, I keep coming back to this idea that living set apart isn't about withdrawing from the world or becoming some kind of hermit. It's about engaging with the world in a different way with a different set of values and priorities.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about being in the world, but not of the world. It's about carrying that sense of holiness, that awareness of God's presence into every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our work, our communities, even our online interactions.
It's about living with intention, with purpose, and with a deep understanding that our actions have ripple effects.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that even though the world has changed dramatically over the centuries, the fundamental truths about human nature and our relationship with the divine remain constant.
You know, as we've been talking about these concepts from Numbers, I've been thinking about my own life and how I might apply some of this ancient wisdom.
Right.
For example, the idea of creating Nazarite moments. I really resonate with that. I'm wondering, have you ever had an experience where you intentionally set aside time or created space for a deeper connection with something bigger than yourself?
That's such a great question. I think for me, it's less about a specific event and more about a mindset. It's that conscious effort to bring a sense of intentionality and reverence to my daily life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's through prayer or meditation. Other times it's through spending time in nature or even just taking a few moments to appreciate the beauty around me.
I love that. It's about finding those moments of stillness and presence amidst the busyness of life. And those moments, as small as they may seem, can be incredibly powerful.
They really can. And, as we think about applying these principles to our modern lives, it's important to remember that it's not about striving for perfection.
Yeah.
The Israelites weren't perfect, and neither are we.
True.
It's about progress, not perfection. It's about showing up each day with a willingness to learn, to grow, and to live in a way that honors something bigger than ourselves.
So well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
Exploring themes of purity, responsibility, devotion, restoration, and blessing. But ultimately, it's up to each of us to take these ancient truths and find ways to make them relevant and meaningful in our own lives.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring these concepts with you. And I hope our conversation has sparked some ideas and inspired you to continue seeking wisdom, both ancient and modern.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking the wisdom that awaits you.